Hello and welcome to Board Game Gumbo. Today we're unboxing Spirit Island by Greater Than Games, along with the Branch and Claw expansion to that same game. We're going to start with the base game first. So Spirit Island is a game for 1 to 4 players. It can be played solo. It is a cooperative game where you're each playing as one of the elemental protectors of an island and trying to fight off sort of these waves of settlers that are coming to the island and trying to take it for its home. It plays in 90 to about 120 minutes, so it's a fairly long game, or can be. Here is our rulebook, which is pretty extensive. So each player will be playing as one of the spirits that you can see up here, and those pretty much represent the elemental forces. So there's a fire spirit, an earth spirit, and so on. And you'll be playing cards on your turn, and those cards will give you different actions, and you'll use those actions to affect the board. So your actions may be to place out more presence, presence being your ability to affect the board, what areas you can affect. You can physically fight off the invaders by attacking them, or you can protect certain areas or move pieces around. So here's sort of our sequence of play here. The players will all play collectively, and then the invaders will have a turn. The interesting thing about this game is that when you play cards on your turn as one of these spirits, you can play a card that's either a fast action or a slow action. Fast actions apply before the invader turn, whereas slow actions apply after the invader turn. So the slow actions may be the more powerful actions or something of that nature, but you may the board state may change between then because of what the invaders do. So there is a solo mode. There's also different scenarios that you can play, and there's a different set of adversaries that you can choose from that slightly change the rules of the game. So there is quite a bit of variability built into the game itself. There's sort of a difficulty chart here. So if you want to make the game more difficult or easier, it explains how exactly to do that. There's different levels to the different adversaries to make them more or less difficult. And then a glossary in the back just explaining all the terms of the game. And on the back here, just a little cheat sheet explaining all the iconography and how different things work. And that's always nice to see. Here's our game board. So it's not a single board, it is modular. So you're going to be placing this out, and I believe the basic rules of this is to keep water on the edges. So maybe something like this. And these different area types are important. So you've got, forests and deserts and sort of mountainous areas, and then water. And those are all important because the invader cards sort of reference those areas. It determines where the invaders go. So all of our different tokens here, we have sort of our resource that we pay to use our abilities. That's these tokens here. So we got some 3s and some 1s. We got some different tokens representing our spirits, and then some fear tokens. Fear is essentially how impactful you are against the enemy. So fear is actually good. The more fearful you are, the more the enemy sort of doesn't want to mess with you. And then all of our other components here. So again, you're trying to fight off these invaders, and the invaders come in 3 different forms. So there are sort of these explorer pieces here. Oop. So our guys with our little flags here. They will come out onto the board in different spaces. And these are sort of the scouts, right? So one of the things that the invaders can do is they do a ravage action, which is basically they're attacking you or your sort of your native peoples. And the explorers here have an attack value of 1. Once they've sort of established themselves, they can build towns on the board. Towns have an attack value of 2, and then eventually they can actually build cities, which have an attack value of 3. So you do have some help in your fight against these invaders, and that's with the natives, which are represented by sort of these mushroomed looking villages. So they will be out on the board as well, and they can assist the players, the spirits, in fighting off these invaders, but they can also be attacked by the invaders as well. Finally, we have some blight tokens here. Blight is really bad. This is essentially the invaders have come in and they've sort of polluted an area through whatever means, and these tokens will go out as well. And one of the mechanics of this game is kind of like Pandemic, is if you ever place a blight token somewhere where there's already blight, then the blight spreads to an adjacent area as well. So it's sort of this rolling mechanic of blight just sort of spreading across the land if you don't pay attention to it. We have some little wooden tabs here, and these represent the presence of your different spirits. So if you're playing as the fire spirit, for example, you'll have these red tabs, and you might have them out on different areas. And where your tabs are determines what areas you can affect. So you basically want your presence on as much island as possible, but then again, putting out presence is one of the things you can do on your turn, which means you're not doing other things. So move our little organizer here. We got some extra bags, and then we have one of the main mechanics of the game, which are the power cards for our different spirits. Let's take a look at those real quick. So each spirit is going to have a deck of cards that are unique to them. So here we have water, fire, earth, and so this would be fire, and this would be lightning. Okay, so this is sort of their generic power card. Explains how they work and the different cards in their deck. And then you get into the actual cards themselves. So here are some of the power cards. You can see that they're noted as either swift actions, which is the red icon, or slow actions, which are the blue turtle icon. And again, that determines where they happen. So swift actions will happen first, then the invader actions will happen, and then slow actions will happen. These cards tell you at what range they work. So again, that's based off of your influence or your presence. So the more presence you have, the more area you can control. And then a target. So some can only target other areas. Some will say specifically forests, but they tell you what you do. So this one would add 1 presence, or if the target already has a presence on it and invaders, you get to deal 3 damage. So again, 3 damage would be a city and an explorer, because the cities take 2 and the explorers take 1. So you could just remove these 2 from the board, and that's obviously really good. This one will allow you to push. So push is basically moving these things. That may be beneficial to put a whole bunch of invaders in one spot so that you can beat them up later, or just to get them out of an area that they are spreading blight in. Or you can also push the locals, and that can be good to get them out of sort of the firing line of the invaders or things like that. Then we have more cards for our different spirits. So again, each spirit has sort of their own deck of cards here. They each work slightly differently. They're kind of, they kind of have like a thematic balance to them. So the earth guys sort of more defensive, and then the fire guys more offensive. Also, the art on these cards is really excellent. All the different spirits look really cool. The cards themselves are like a linen finish, so they're really nice quality cards. You've got some cheat cards here. Just explains how the turn works. So again, fast cards happen, then the invader happens, then slow cards happen. Pretty straightforward. On the back here, just explains some of the different mechanics in the game and how they work. Another little cheat sheet here for the different spirit actions, which we'll look at when we look at the spirit boards. And then it explains the different pieces and their health, and also the damage that they do. Finally, we have some minor power cards, and we have another deck of them here. So let's go and take a look at that. So you start the game with these powers that are specific to your spirit. So the fire spirit starts with the fire powers, but then throughout the course of the game, you can gain these additional powers, which are kind of like generic powers. But there's, obviously you can see quite a big deck of them, and there's also major powers. And obviously the major powers are stronger, but they're also going to cost more. So at the top of each card, you may have noticed that there's a number, and that's how many resources you have to pay, energy you have to pay in order to play those cards. So we've got some cards here, like these 6 cards. A tsunami is obviously going to be pretty powerful. It does 8 damage, but it also can destroy the native pieces. And then if you have a certain number of these icons, you do an additional effect. So each player is going to be playing a card, and each card you play is going to have these icons on it. And then at the end of the round, collectively, if you have cards that gain a bonus, you're going to look at all the symbols that are played and potentially gain that bonus as well. So that's the major cards. And then the minor powers here are another option for you. Again, much cheaper cards. Some are zeros. Looks like just zeros and ones. But again, other cards that you can acquire throughout the course of the game to sort of customize your deck so that it can do exactly what you want it to do. We also have here the fear cards. So fear, again, is good. Fear is how the explorers, how the invaders feel about the spirits themselves. So the more afraid that the invaders are, the better. And as you complete invader cards, it will actually change the game. So in this one, invaders cannot build on lands that already have a city if you complete this fear card. And then if you complete enough fear cards, you will actually win the game entirely. So that's one of your victory conditions there. Finally, we have these 2 cards here. So the corruption that the enemies put out are actually going to start here on this island card. And if you ever remove all of the corruption, this card is going to flip over. Now your island has been blighted. It's been infected by these invaders, and it's going to change the rules of the game as well. So there's a lot of different moving parts here, increasing fear, reducing corruption, things of that nature. And a lot of this stuff interacts with each other to change the game state. Finally, here we have the sort of invader cards. And this will determine where the new invader pieces come out, and also where they build, where they attack, things of that nature. So these are just a deck of cards numbered 3, 2, and 1, and you're going to draw from this deck as you play the game, with the 3s being on the bottom, and then the 2s, and then at the start the 1s. So you're going to draw a card. It's going to tell you what area they're affecting, right? So they're affecting water areas, they're affecting blue areas. Next turn, they're affecting mountainous areas. Next turn, they're affecting jungles, and so on. And then finally, sand areas. And what they do is actually determined by this other board, which we'll pull out real quick. So this board here sort of tracks all the different aspects of the game. So you've got your fear deck here, right? And if you run out of your fear deck, you immediately win. Here's where your fear tokens would be. So you'll have the fear tokens up here, and when you generate them, they'll go into here. Any earned fear cards, so basically any current effects. Here's your terror level card. This is where your island card will go here for the blight, and also keep track of your blight. But down here, this board won't quite lay flat for me. Down here is your sort of your explore deck, and this is where these cards will go, right, like so. And so the first card you draw each turn will determine where they're building. So they're going to build in a water area. So they're going to put out either a explorer or a city or a town, and then that card is going to go down. And the next turn they're going to build in the mountain. Well, they're also going to ravage in a water space. Ravage being them attacking. And then these cards are going to resolve like so, and then a new one is going to come out. So you have this progression of what the explorers are doing that you can sort of keep track of. You never really know what the next card is, Although you do know, if you know the game, that this is the sand card because there's always those 4. As you get into the second and third phase, these cards get a little more difficult. So this one will affect coastal lands. And then you get into the 3s, and they actually affect 2 separate areas at a time. That's essentially how the invaders attack. Their attack is based off of this deck of cards, which is sort of programmed in, so you can kind of gauge what they're going to do based on what's left. So our other pieces here, we have the different spirits. Oop. So spirits always have like a special power here or a special rule. They'll have these tokens listed here. And as you remove tokens, which is your presence, as you put presence out on the board, not only are you gaining access to more areas that you can affect, but it's also giving you either more energy per turn, or it's allowing you to play more cards per turn. At the start of each round, you're always going to have a growth phase, and then you're going to choose one of these things to do. So the rampant green always adds a presence to a jungle or a wetland, and then it gets to pick one of these other 3 things to do. And then it also tells you what your innate powers are. And these, again, are things you can activate if you have these symbols at the end of the round. So these are your different spirits. They also have on the back here, they have sort of a background to them. It tells you how to set them up. It tells you the basic play style, and then also gives you complexity, which I really appreciate in games like this, when they give you sort of a difficulty or a complexity rating, so you know which ones to start with. But here's all of our different spirits that you can play with. Complexity high on this one. It also tells you like what their powers do in general. So this one has a lot of fear powers, but not a lot of offense powers. Here's the lightning, water. Oh, so 2 water. Ocean's hungry grasp, and the river surges in sunlight. So as you can see, quite a few different spirits to choose from. Our final things in here, we have sort of these terror levels. So again, as you increase your fear, you may increase your level of terror, and this actually changes your win condition. So if you get to terror level 3, all you have to do to win is to defeat all the cities on the board, where if you're in terror level 2, you have to defeat all the villages and all the cities. And then finally, we have another little package of cards here. And these are going to be our different scenarios, as well as the different adversaries that you can face. So we looked in the main rulebook, they kind of gave us a difficulty table, and that is going to be based off of the level of adversary you choose, but also the type of adversary you choose. So your different adversaries are like the Kingdom of Prussia, and their different levels. It explains the difference in them. Kingdom of England, Sweden, and then these are the scenarios that you can play as. So scenarios just change some of the rules of the game. It tells you how to set up the board sometimes. So that's everything for the base game. I will point out that from what I can see here, that this organizer that they give you, while really nice, it looks like everything's going to fit back into it, is not going to accommodate sleeve cards. I can tell you that right away. So that's a little unfortunate. But we're going to get everything back in the box, and then we're going to take a look at the expansion. All right, so putting away the base game, you can see here, one, everything doesn't quite fit back into the box. I think it'd be a little easier if I took these out of these bags, but I decided not to for now. I think this is really a game that would be complemented a lot by an organizer, just because of like the scenario based things, changing the setup for the game. It'd be nice to be able to reach everything a little more quickly than this organizer provides, but it is a really nice organizer for itself. It even has a little finger wells on it, which I really like. I appreciate that. The one really kind of major complaint I have is with these tokens, which aren't super important. They're reminder tokens. So if you're playing as the red player, right, and you do an effect that affects this area, you're going to put this token on it just to remind yourself that, hey, that's where I did that effect. I really wish that these icons were different. for the different colors, just to help people who may have issues with seeing different colors. I think the colors are different enough, but I think this purple and this blue might get mistaken by people with that sort of issue. So kind of wish that had been something they considered, but overall, really pleased with the production quality here of the base game. The cards and the cardboard components are really nicely done. But let's go ahead and take a look at the expansion, the Branch and Claw expansion here, and see what that adds to the game. So based off of the information that the company provides, at least, this does not change the playtime of the game. It's still 90 to 120 minutes, still 1 to 4 players, although it does add a little bit of complexity to the game. So here's our rule book. So one of the things that this expansion adds is just more stuff, right? So more of the minor powers, more of the major powers, more of the spirits to play as. There's 2 new spirits, there's more scenarios, there's more adversaries, all those different things. The new sort of mechanisms that they add is this event deck here, and these 4 different little tokens that you can put out on the board. So a lot of this is going to be similar. The setup is not terribly different. There's some of those extra tokens that are added out. The event cards is sort of the big difference. And then these 4 new tokens that you can put out on the board. Little updates for rules, it looks like. And then your new adversary, which is the Kingdom of France. And then a new difficulty chart to include that new adversary over here, which looks like it's pretty hard. I mean, their base level is difficulty 2. So, and then a nice little glossary on the back. So here are our new tokens. So there are 4 different types of tokens here. So we have sort of these wilds tokens. This prevents the exploration effect from happening. So when you place these out on the board and that invader card comes out that says that the invaders explore, they put out new pieces, this is going to prevent that. These are mostly temporary. So the wilds tokens, we have beast tokens here. Beast tokens can actually attack invaders and also generate fear. These are a little more permanent. These will stay out for a while, I believe. We have strife tokens. This specifically prevents the invader's next attack in an area, so they won't deal damage. And then the final one is the disease token here, and this will prevent the next build action on an area, so they can't put out buildings. We've had these little stone tokens here that actually not certain how these are used, but let's get into our new spirits. So we have sharp fangs behind the leaves, which is obviously taking advantage of these beast tokens here. So their new growth, they actually get 2 growths here instead of 1. Their presence lets them put out animals and also plants. And then their card section, and they start with playing 2 cards, which is kind of cool. Their innate powers here at the bottom, which we already explained. And then on the back, little flavor text, their setup, playstyle, and they are moderate difficulty with sort of a balance between the card types, but not a ton of defense and very little utility. Also tells you that they use the beast tokens. And then the second one, Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds. Their growth, presence, and card play. Their innate powers. And then on the back, he's also moderate difficulty with very little fear, but a lot of offense. So our new card pack here. So our one new adversary is the Kingdom of France. And then we've got a few new scenarios. So again, scenarios are a way to play the game. Sort of the basic game is the Blitz scenario. But all of these scenarios change setup, they change rules. So these are sort of a variable way to really play the game. We've got another board in here, which looks like it's just a spot to put our stuff. So now we have a spot to put our scenario. We have a spot to put our adversary. I kind of feel like this is unnecessary, but you have it. some extra bags, and then of course extra cards here. So it looks like we have some new island cards, which is kind of interesting. And of course extra major and minor power cards, as well as our new spirit cards. So extra major cards here, just more variability here in your major cards. Same quality of cards as the base game, which is, first of all, high quality, but also really nice to see. One of the sort of the pitfalls of expansions can sometimes be that the component quality or even like the coloration of cards is slightly off. Extra fear cards, which again just is going to add more variability, so you're not always seeing the same cards every playtime. Here's our event deck. So the event deck is going to basically, you draw one every turn, and it's going to do little things, which may change the board state. It may change rules. Let's see if I can get my camera to focus there. There we go. So this one is just, there's a drought, and then it'll add certain things to the board. It reduces health of units. This one's going to deal damage to the native units on the board. So again, you're going to draw one of these each round. So it's just going to add a little bit of sort of the unknown to each round. Because one of the things that this game can do, if you play it a lot, is it can get kind of scripted, because you don't know, like you kind of know what the enemy is going to do on its turn. You kind of know what the next card in the enemy deck is going to be, because they're always the same. So these event cards are just going to add a little bit of variability in each round. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but you've seen quite a few of them now, so you kind of get the gist of what they're doing. We have new island cards. So in the base game, there are 2 of these, and now you've got quite a few more. So again, adding variability to the game, adding a little bit of the unknown to a game that can get a little scripted if you have a lot of experience with it. These just look like sort of cheat sheets explaining the new mechanics. And then we have sort of our minor power cards, which are quite a few new ones. And then our sort of starting cards for our 2 new spirits, which we'll go through. So this is going to be the what was he? The fangs in the leaves, sharp fangs in the leaves spirit. So here are his starting cards. And then our second guy is the Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds. There we go. And those are his 4 starting cards. And that's it. That's everything you get in the base game of Spirit Island, but also the Branch and Claw expansion.